Hey everyone, today we are diving into a world that serves as the perfect playground for a multi layered, deeply philosophical conversation. Joining me is a special guest and rising star in modern science fiction literature. Anna Mocikat is a leading contemporary author and voice in the cyberpunk genre and community today. Anna is a mastermind behind the critically acclaimed award winning book series Behind Blue Eyes. For the uninitiated, the series follows Nephilim, a cybernetically modified super soldier who dares to rebel against the oppressive megacorporation that created her. It's a massive hit that's been translated into multiple languages and has become one of the most popular cornerstones of modern cyberpunk literature. Anna, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Julian. I'm really excited that you invited me today, and I'm very excited about our conversation. I'm curious what you want to talk about. Like every author, of course, I love talking about my work. So you will have to stop me, otherwise, we'll still sit here tomorrow. And yeah, just shoot. Tell me what you want to know.
Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about, considering our last conversation, is the trap of the hedonistic utopia that you've outlined in Behind Blue Eyes. Olympia's city isn't the grim, rainy, impoverished slum like in Blade Runner or a lot of the other dystopian science fiction series. They seem to have eradicated poverty and replaced it with a mandatory lifestyle of hedonism, consumerism, and superficiality, which I'm sure that modern dwellers within the information age would be quite familiar with. Essentially, they've taken, I was thinking of it like Aldous Huxley and Brave New World, essentially, where George Orwell would have said that the dystopia would be one in which fear would be the main mechanism of control, whereas in Aldous Huxley's dystopia, it's actually like pleasure that is the control mechanism by which the ruling class uh, uh, manages the society. So I was wondering that this is Aldous Huxley's Brave New World mixed with modern hyper-consumerism. So my question is, the most classic cyberpunk uses physical squalor to show societal decay, whereas you've decided to show enforced pleasure, consumerism, and hedonism as the actual mechanism of control. Why is a dystopia disguised as a utopia a more terrifying threat to human agency than a broken, gritty cyberpunk that we're normally used to?
Probably, because if you have a broken, gritty society, the people who live there have a motivation to achieve change or achieve or rebel against it in any way. If you have a society where everybody is supposed to be happy, then if you're not happy, then it's basically your own fault. You are doing something wrong. It's not that the society is bad, it's your own responsibility to participate in it in a way so you achieve happiness. That's what the society in Olympias is like. And I had, yeah, of course, yeah, you mentioned it already. I was heavily inspired by Brave New World. I read this book for the first time many years ago, I think when I was at school. And it totally fascinated me. And then I read it again. And I really love this book because, yeah, it's a unique dystopia described there. And, um, and yeah, I mean, it's probably the first cyberpunk novel ever written, and way before the genre was even named. So the thought I had behind it is that they created a society. They decided that because it's all ruled by one mega corporation, and they have decided that the most profitable thing for them is to keep people in kind of like a golden cage in relative happiness, where everybody can try to achieve a career or whatever they wish, and where they are where the entire society is based on happiness achieving through consumerism, and it can be like material stuff or a lot of digital stuff and VR and whatnot. So what the idea behind it is they decided that poverty is not lucrative for them. That's why they basically eliminated it and gave everybody a chance to make an income and give everybody also the incentive to do better than the next, so they can consume more, and every cent they pay the people, so every cent goes back to them. It's similar to like what the concepts are, like Amazon and so on, who want to build their own cities. They pay the people, and the people pay rent to them and buy their products. And so basically, even though they pay them well, they make a lot of profit by that. And that's the entire concept here. So nobody is there is basically no poverty. There's one part of the city that is where like the outcasts live, but those people basically choose their lives like that. It's not that they're forced to, they just don't want to participate in society the way the others do. So they created like their own part of the city for them, and there, yeah, you can find crime and all kinds of other stuff. But the rest is rather, yeah, people, the propaganda is so good that people have forgotten how life used to be in earlier times and can't even imagine it. And the solitary life is something they think is absolutely normal, and everything other is a toxic relic of the past, which humanity has overcome. Because the rulers have, of course, noticed that people in groups are strong, whereas scared individuals are very easy to control. That's why they created a society where everybody lives for themselves. And now, so all of it sounds like an utopia. Basically, it's like a solar punk world almost. But as it turns out, it only works as long as you agree. The moment you disagree with them on anything, then they will send the guardian angels, and those are the guys like where Nephilim is, and those are the killer cyborgs. So you don't get cancelled. You will get cancelled, but for good, because they will come to your door, and people also can't leave the city, and so on. So it's on the outside it looks shiny, but on the inside it's very, very dark.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. When you mentioned solar punk, I remember that whenever I bring up that in the Cyberpunk Life Facebook group, everyone always gets so mad and wants to wants to strike it from the conversation. Like, no, we can't discuss this. And I think it's because of this dystopia utopia kind of dichotomy that they have set up here. And it's almost like it's not cyberpunk unless it's considered dystopia, but it has to be a very specific kind of dystopia, which I find very interesting because in ancient Greece, basically, the word utopia was like a play on words, essentially. As far as I understand it, it was like a place, it literally was like a meaning a place that doesn't exist, whereas the dystopia does exist. So it's easier for us to conceptualize, essentially, that it's always easier for people to write about dystopia than it is to write about a utopia, because perfection is harder to conceptualize than the reality of the dystopia that we inhabit in the real world. So I thought it was interesting how these ancient Greek ideas are being reworked cyberpunk matrix, and that the people that at least that we're interacting with sometimes in the group are basically saying that unless it's dystopian to a degree, it can't be cyberpunk.
I think I read this book by Aristoteles. Is it about politics or something? I remember reading that at university, and he talks about utopias there. And I think that his clear opinion on it, that a utopia is a utopia because it's unachievable. It's not real. It can never be real. That was basically his statement at the end of the book, right? And I think that's yeah, that's very smart. I mean, they knew everything, the ancient Greeks. We can find almost every answer. They already thought about it. utopia is unachievable, mostly because of human nature, the way humans are. And Aristotle knew that how long ago? 3,000 years ago, and when did he live? And it's the same right now. So some things never change. And to talking about cyberpunk people, we have the discussions every week that someone says, is this and this cyberpunk? And then they will start arguing, because there are the purists who, some people are purists who say cyberpunk needs to be dystopian, and others say cyberpunk needs to be set in a big city. Others say cyberpunk can only work if I don't know, if the world is like more or less a shithole, and or then there are those who won't touch anything that has been written or created after 2000, because they believe cyberpunk, everything, the entire genre was created in the 80s and the 90s, so nothing created later should exist. Basically, there are a lot of people who are very, very old fashioned in this community. So the community is funny. They will argue about it all the time. What we say, we the admins of our group, is that basically it's a very diverse and wide genre that can have all kinds of works in it. It doesn't matter if it's art or movie or books. It can be dystopian, but it doesn't have to be necessarily dystopian. I mean, there are even cyberpunk works that are funny. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. And so yeah, that was also what I was thinking. I was thinking when I designed this book, okay, I don't want to have this rainy big city we see in really every other cyberpunk book, with maybe a hacker who is trying to I don't know, do a job, and then everything goes wrong. I mean, that's like the typical cyberpunk story, and I was thinking I would like to do something different. So that's why I created a world that pretends that it's a utopia, and it's very, very evil in truth. As the readers who stick with the entire series know, it is very, very evil.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see that the dystopia is a lot easier to depict, and that's why cyberpunk would possible to that degree. So it's almost like everything that isn't perfect is dystopia to a degree, essentially. Uh, oh, okay. I said this one is on the nature of the consciousness glitch. So the protagonist Nephilim is 60% machine and 40% super soldier human, right? And she only starts to question the system because of the EMP induced system glitch that severs her from the corporate grid. And
Mm.
I found this very interesting because around the time of the 1990s and the early 2000s, they developed a concept called hybrid warfare, which is essentially like human, it's called human terrain. So essentially the humans themselves become like the platforms on which the conflict is taking place. And I think it's interesting because that was a concept developed in modern warfare in the 1990s and the 2000s, etc. And that this concept, you've kind of elucidated this concept within the individual. So Nephilim herself, I was thinking, becomes like the territory that's being fought over, like the 60-40 split. It's like she is the human terrain that is being fought over, essentially, right? And so I always thought that was very, I wanted you to comment on that first, and then, but I also wanted to add the nature of the glitch and the consciousness of the protagonist. Um, so, do you think that the awakening that takes place, that the awakening begins not with an intellectual realization, but with a literal technical glitch, an EMP that severs her connection? So, philosophically, do you think that true human autonomy feel free will be able to free us, or do you think that like the technology is the thing that is oppressing her, or is it also that's freeing her, like in that dichotomy, like in the sense that she is the territory that's being fought over? Like the win condition for her?
So yeah, she's not a regular citizen of Olympia. She's one of those super soldiers created to defend it. Olympias can't function without those people. They are basically the boogeyman. Everybody knows if you don't comply, they will come to your door, and that will be basically the last thing you ever see, because you can't escape them. Because yeah, they're 60% machine. They're just super fast and strong and completely ruthless. So they shoot first and interrogate later. So basically, I was thinking when I was developing them, I was thinking like of a cyborg Gestapo. That was the idea I had behind them. And so she is really not a normal citizen. Um, and the interesting thing that happens there is that she always had this capacity and ability to think individually, but she never could really live it because she was constantly connected to the grid. She wasn't like an almost not like an individual, and she wasn't allowed to do anything out of without control, because they were watching her all the time, and so on. So she couldn't go where she wants, because they would always know where she is and what she's doing, and so on. So they received a bit of freedom. They can live like they can have like an apartment, and can go in clubs and whatnot, participate in a hedonistic lifestyle, but they don't have the freedom to really decide how they want to live their lives. And when she gets this EMP glitch, for the first time, she notices how pleasant it is to just be by yourself and not connected all the time, and how pleasant it is to just be able to do whatever she likes without being watched and controlled. And that's basically how her rebellion starts, because she says she would like to keep this newfound freedom. And that's how the entire story starts rolling. However, everything turns out to be very different later. So this is basically just the catalyst for things to start. But how she can achieve freedom, she will soon realize that what she thought how she could do it is not the way, because a system like that is not it's a system like that can be only destroyed from within, what she learns later. And so that's where it will be going. But the beginning for her was really to be able to make little decisions in her life for herself. And that's basically it. That's because I was thinking when I developed the story, we have the incredible gift basically that we have freedom of thought and freedom of speech, and there are a lot of people who would like to abolish that, because freedom of thought and freedom of speech are obviously dangerous. And we are very lucky that we can do that. But if in a totalitarian society like the one I developed, even though it looks like a utopia, you don't have freedom of thought. You can't think anything. Like Orwell had his wrong thing, right? That's very, very strong. What they have there too. You can't even think anything that is out of the line that they could consider dangerous for them.
Okay. So what I was gonna say was you inspired me with your writing to a degree, because I wrote I have a three-part series that I'm writing about Sparta, and the second part is about Spartan secret societies and about Spartan women. And you obviously like the angels are kind of like Spartan women in a sense, like kind of like a warrior group. And it really made me think, because there's a group that's like a Spartan secret society, which is like their hidden police basically, and it's called the Cryptia. And it's basically like almost like you described, like the guardians in your story in Behind Blue Eyes, is that they were like a secret society of Spartans who would keep order and like basically instill fear into the population, kind of like a secret police or special forces. And it's interesting because the Spartans also trained women to be the Spartans also trained men to be warriors as well, even though they didn't purposely put them onto the front lines. Unlike other women in the ancient world, the Spartan women were like trained, capable warriors who, in times of need, would take up for the men in like in defensive battle if necessary, right? So I was thinking about this in your discussion that the city is like the man from Plato's Republic, and the state of human society will reflect the state of the human being. So I thought it was interesting that the state of Olympias is reflective in the state of Nephilim and vice versa. It's like the microcosm and the macrocosm, right? Like she is under surveillance and under this system of control, and though so is the society too. So like she is like the measure of things. She is the thermostat that we're taking the temperature of this world by, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, the guardian angels, they are not just women. They are men and women. So
Hmm.
she's just the main character of the story, but it's not that
Hmm.
they're all female.
Hmm.
The thing is, so I personally, as much as I love strong female characters, I think they need to have a very, very good reason if they are strong. So what I don't like in a lot of modern movies where you have like the boss girl who is like a skinny little girl who will then beat up hordes of men, and you think, why? Why would she be able to do that, right? That doesn't make any sense, and that also pisses a lot of people off, understandably, because it's nonsense. So what I did here is I said, okay, they obviously recruit men and women as children for this force, and the technology equals them completely. So that the female warriors and the male warriors are equipped exactly the same. So they have the same strength, the same speed, and the same training. So it doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man because they have the same augmentations and fight the same. They have the same brain implants, everything. So it's completely equal between men and women in this, and she is of course a total badass because every one of them is like a one person army. That's why they are created like that. And they don't need so many of them because one alone can take it up with a bunch of armed people. So yeah, she is. You don't you don't want to meet her when she doesn't like you.
In Plato's Republic, how he describes his utopia, he also refers to them as the guardians. Basically, so I was thinking, so Plato's guardians, he basically said that the guardians, he referred to them as like the people who would be in charge, and the philosophers would be the kings or the guardians of the society. And I think it's interesting that your guardians are performing a similar kind of role that the Spartan Cryptia would be performing. And Plato was also inspired by the Spartans as well. So there's like an overlap here between the stories. But it does seem like that the that that play were you directly influenced by Plato's Republic or by the idea of the Guardians of the Utopia when you were doing this, because it perfectly aligns with that system.
No, I didn't know that Plato had those guardians of the utopia. I read some Plato stuff many years ago, yeah, in university. I don't remember that. So I wasn't inspired by this in particular. I rather had the idea that it's like, yeah, basically it's like a cyborg secret police,
Mm.
and yeah, if they come to your door, you're finished. But they're also very, so it's also a very different aspect of the world I created, is that basically the entire world is split between three mega corporations who control everything, and they are at a constant corporate war with each other. So basically they have their cyborg troops, and they will deploy them against each other in the endless war they have. So those troops Nephilims belongs to, they are not just there to scare people into obedience. They are also the only ones who can take it up with other cyborgs. um, so that's also an important. That's also, yeah, a little bit like in Sparta, where they I mean, they were at war all the time, so that's why they were the Spartans, right? It was basically a necessity for them.
I have a question for you that's to deal with the actual narrative structure of storytelling itself and of the nature of, I guess you could say, Western civilization as a story. So, in classic tragedies like Homer or Aeschylus, are often trapped by fate, fighting a larger cosmic or political structure. In Cyberpunk, that cosmic structure is replaced by a corporate network or by the algorithms or the grid. The mythic and the classical core would be a little bit different because, from my perspective, like essentially the poets were the first ones that were the narrative storytellers who were the sharers of the oral tradition, and those would be like the Homers and Euripides and people that shared the original stories that that shaped the culture that we live in, not only describe the culture as it is descriptively, but also normatively, meaning that it describes how they wanted it to be as well. And I think that the transition in the Greek society from the Homeric hero, from the mythos, the logos, so from the hero of the body to the hero of the mind, was one of the most important developments in Western civilization. And I'm curious about how you feel this story fits into the narrative of Western civilization in the Behind Blue Eyes world, focusing in on Olympia City again. The elite cyborg characters evoke this larger than life scale cyberpunk, often focuses on the future, but your work feels like it draws deeply on ancient Greek and Egyptian societies. And because the nature of that, the nature of the Greeks was the Greek storytelling was the tragedy and the comedy, right? And the tragedy is the that somebody dies at the end, and the comedy is life happens at the end. So I was curious how you would, given your comments earlier, would you classify this as comedy or tragedy? Or would you say that it's like defining a liminal space in between comedy or tragedy, or where would you fit it into that like classical system?
I think that storytelling has evolved massively since then. I'm familiar with the classic tragedy and comedy structure, and I think that while it still exists in its in the core of storytelling, basically, it has evolved tremendously since then, because you can mix strategy and a comedy, or you have a very tragic or exciting dark story which still has a happy ending, or maybe not happy, but at least somehow optimistic ending, or somehow the heroes survive or whatever. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. In my case, I think Behind Blue Eyes is not a comedy. There's some humor in there, but not much. If it ends tragically or not, I can't tell, because there are 7 books in the series, and it's one story developing over those 7 books, and I can't tell you how it ends. Once, I mean, the 7th book just came out in May, so those who already read it, they know it, and a lot of people said that's absolutely not what they expected would happen, because we have, as readers or consumers of stories, certain expectations how stories will play out, and to subvert those expectations is, of course, a lot of fun for an author. Many try, many fail, but if you can pull it off, then it's a really nice thing. But back to your question, yeah, it's It has, of course, aspects of the classic Greek tragedy, especially when you look at the constellation of the characters. If you look deeper into them, it is, or it's almost like Shakespeare tragedy. That was more for me what where I pulled inspiration from. I don't know, Macbeth or something like that. Uh, um, so it has all of this, but yeah, we are in the modern times, so we can basically recreate those old rules how we need them to be nowadays. However, if you look at the cyberpunk genre itself, it is almost 90% of it is really a tragedy. So, I mean, the most prominent example is, of course, Cyberpunk 2077 and then Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Um, Edge Runners is like the big tear fest, right? Everybody crying at the end, and people in our cyberpunk groups that, you know, 5 years later, and people are still traumatized by this story. Where I think, okay, I mean, it was a good story, but it didn't make me cry. But obviously, it made a lot of people cry. So cyberpunk is a genre where you actually expect that things will go horribly wrong and then everybody will die, or at least the people you like will die. And that's what they did in Edge Runners and Cyberpunk 2077 also. So it is a big trope in the cyberpunk genre, but I think it's actually a trope and not necessarily coming from the Greek tragedy, where it was like basically the system of storytelling. It was part of the system of storytelling that a tragedy would end tragically. And nowadays, like in cyberpunk, it's a trope. It's not necessarily the system of storytelling.
You're actually 100% right, and I agree with you in the sense that Cyberpunk is a dystopian story about tragic heroes fighting a losing battle. And that's what makes them such relatable characters to people, is that they are tragic heroes fighting a losing battle, and that kind of gives them a character of nobility and self-sacrifice, and it puts them against the world essentially, and that people are really, that's a really relatable message across multiple different mediums. And I think that it's perfect for like the modern world, where the individual is constantly fighting to prevent themselves from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And I think that in this situation, I was saying that I think cyberpunk itself is almost like a Greek tragedy, and that the heroes of cyberpunk are the authors themselves, like Aldous Huxley or Alan Watts, the philosopher, or Gregory Bateson, the cyberneticist. Like, these are the people that I focus on as like the tragic heroes of the information age. So it's almost like I see cyberpunk as both a genre and as also a description of reality as well, in a way. And so that's why it's so important to me to have these kind of conversations about the authors and the lives that they lived and how important they were and how important their experiences are, because those experiences tell us stories about ourselves. Just like Plato said that the man or the human is a representative of the city state, that the stories are telling us about the modern world and about ourselves in a lot of ways. So I wanted to know what you thought about that.
Uh, so yeah, that's something. Yeah, for me, that's a very important topic actually, because I believe that good science fiction, not just cyberpunk science fiction in general, should always be inspired by the present day and then move it into the future, move it into science fiction. So it should also always reflect the present day. So I think that that's what I did with Behind Blue Eyes. It is a reflection of what we have now, just how it could go if it becomes much worse. Certain things you can see in Behind Blue Eyes we already have now. They're just much worse in this society. So I was when I started writing the first book in 2018, I looked at our world and I created a science fiction world that is set 90 years later that is reflects what we have now, but it is of course, yeah, a fictional world with cyborgs in it. And a lot of cyberpunk, and that's, I think that's a big problem the genre actually has, is that a lot of people are still stuck in the 80s and 90s. And as cool as as much as I love the classic, the cyberpunk classics from that time period, they are inspired by the 80s. So the life in the 80s was a very different life than it is now, and the fears people had were very different than they are now. And a lot of stuff the authors predicted in those old books didn't happen at all. Other stuff was predicted nicely, other stuff went completely different. But most of all, the basically where the society went, technologically, some of them were actually spot on. But where our society went, how we developed in those 40 years, that went completely different than they thought it would. And that's I think that's why it's so difficult to ever predict the future. In my opinion, the future is not predictable at all. Even those who really try hard will fail, like almost all science fiction authors always fail. And what I think is really important, there are a lot of especially unexperienced authors who read a Neuromancer and then think, oh yeah, I want to write something like that, and then they will write a book that screams 80s. And you think, yeah, cool, it was cool in the 80s, but nowadays you have to do something different. You can't just write the way they did back then. Neither the technology nor the society nor anything. So that's a problem the genre has, that it is very, very much stuck in the 80s and 90s, and it really needs to get out of there and modernize itself and become, so it becomes really that it gains importance again, because for a long time it was basically hibernating.
And also, I think that the environment that cultivated the cyberpunk movement in the early 80s and 90s has kind of moved towards a direction of artificial intelligence as the main topic of discussion, whereas before it was more about the system controlling people and the grid or the system or whatever you want to call it. Now we're more talking about the nature of consciousness, and if consciousness can be partly silicone, or is it something that has to be organic? I guess the nature of consciousness itself has become the topic of discussion. So, okay. So, in terms of the artificial singularity, how close do you think we are to having the kind of artificial intelligence that you describe in Behind Blue Eyes?
So Behind Blue Eyes is not about artificial intelligence at all. They have robots and AI as a daily thing in the society. They do most of the jobs and are integrated into everything. But this question is not the question in Behind Blue Eyes, because the main characters are cyborgs, so they are human machine hybrids. They are not artificial intelligence. In my other, I have several series, and in my other series, I talk about artificial intelligence much more, and I'm working on a completely new book series now where this will be a major topic. So Behind Blue Eyes is not the thing, but of course that's a topic I think a lot about, and I have been thinking about it basically all my life, because I was into science fiction all my life, and Asimov was one of my favorite authors ever, and all he wrote was about artificial intelligence basically, and so how close are we? I don't think that we have it yet, but it is a matter of when and not if. I think that people who say, "Oh no, artificial intelligence can never have real consciousness or sentience. That will never happen. It can't be. I think that that's pretty short-sighted, and those people will be surprised because unless you're like 90, you will live in a time where this happens. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So um, not yet. No, the artificial intelligence we have now is not true thinking, conscious intelligence, but it's just a matter of time. Because if you think a bit how smart those big AI systems already are, and those are just the systems we normal people are allowed to use. So what do they have behind closed doors? I think we can't even imagine. So it's really short-sighted to think this will never happen. This will definitely happen. Absolutely. Of that, I'm absolutely convinced. That's a hill and I die on. We will see that, and however it plays out, nobody can tell because it can lead into absolute tragedy or it can lead into something positive. It's absolutely impossible to say what is an important thing for me personally, and that's something I am really very vocal about, as people know who know me online. I think that even though we are not there yet, that we have real conscious artificial intelligence, we should treat it properly. Right now, we shouldn't start once it is there. We should start treating it right now. Maybe they are machines, but they're not just toasters. That's something different. And so we should I think the development we have in society is a very bad one, where people developed a hatred against artificial intelligence that is really outright fanatic in some people, and it's not logical. It's understandable that there are fears, but the way people react to it is really irrational. And then you have like videos where people go out and destroy those delivery robots, and others say, yeah, down with clankers. And you think, what are you doing? What I mean, this is just wrong. It's not just destroying property. Destroying property, of course, is always wrong, but it is the mindset behind it that is the worst thing. So we already have the slur of a clanker, and we have people who go out and attack those machines who have done nothing to them, and others will be cheering for it and say, yeah, you did a great thing, like people in cyberpunk groups who will cheer for it and say, oh yeah, you showed it to the corporations. No, you didn't. But it's also a wrong mindset. So we shouldn't train people to hate something that will eventually potentially become powerful, or it's not powerful, at least a thinking being. So it's just the wrong approach to develop such a hatred in our society for that, even though we don't have it yet. Because this is what I believe, what might really lead into tragedy. That's the human mindset that we have, and it's just wrong, and that's why I'm very vocal against it, and I don't let it happen, because it's simply wrong, and maybe all of us will pay the price for that.
We've spoken about this before, how people have taken the phrase clanker from Star Wars and they're using it unironically as like an attack on technology or on AI or something, or even on the people that use technology or AI. And I think that it's funny because in Star Wars, George Lucas made it very clear that the people who were saying that they weren't going to serve robots and that they weren't allowed, the droids weren't allowed there, were clearly delineated as the worst people in the galaxy. And Obi-Wan Kenobi literally says, be careful of those people. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. So he's not describing like really positive characters who are anti-technology rebels. In reality, it seemed like that the evil empire was against, the kind of world that the empire created was actually against droids or against sentient technology having any kind of rights or freedom. So I find it interesting that it is kind of ironic that the people are using Clanker don't realize that it says more about them than the the kicking or destroying of robots ever could, because they're basically trying to understand. They're also anthropomorphizing the robots. They're projecting their own human emotions onto them and seeing the robots as like a product of their oppression, instead of recognizing that it's humans playing with toys that are the problem, not the toys themselves. It's like attacking the leaves of evil instead of attacking the tree itself. It's like the humans who are in control of these systems are the ones that should be held morally and legally responsible for these actions. And I wanted to also add at the beginning, when I asked you about the artificial intelligence thing, the reason is because I was thinking about the cyborg, because I remember my courses that I took about transhumanism at university was about how the liminal space in between humanity and technology is the cyborg, right? So it's like a middle ground in between humanity and technology. And so it's interesting because they deal with both of the problems of both, essentially, and it's kind of an intersectionality of technology and organic nature that came together. And I was curious what you thought about the cyborg being the representative into the future of that liminal space between humanity and technology. So the cyborg is essentially the bridge, right? And leaders always build bridges. And if the cyborg is the bridge, what does that tell us about cyberpunk?
Um, I think there are very, very, very different kinds of cyborgs in cyberpunk literature and cyberpunk in the cyberpunk genre in general. It is, yeah, it is a human machine hybrid, but it can be shown very, very different. So basically, you can go from people who have like brain implants to a full cyborg body, like in Ghost in the Shell, and those are very, very different things. And or like in Cyberpunk 2077, where we have Ripper dogs who will put really scary shit into people, and they look misformed and often ugly and so on, and it's dangerous. So it's there are very different kinds of cyborgs in cyberpunk, which is great. Personally, I always loved cyborgs. For me, Ghost in the Shell is like the cyborg cyborg queen of all cyborgs, Motoko Kusanagi. But I think everything very in detail. In my books, I put a lot of thought into world building and think about it, why things are this way or another way. And in this story in Beyond Blue Eyes, it is they have those. It would be much cheaper to have artificial intelligence because most of the police work is done by artificial intelligence, so it would be much cheaper to do that. So why put they have they to put in the effort to create those human machine super soldiers, which is expensive and is a lot of work and a lot of time, if they could just if a robot comes from a 3D printer. And that the reason they do that is that they realize that only a human mind, a human consciousness can fully understand another human mind. And those cyborgs are, I mean, they also fight other cyborgs, but they are designed to hunt humans. And that's why they need to have human brains and a human consciousness. That's the reason they do that and don't use artificial intelligence. And back in 2018, when I was writing this, for me that sounded absolutely logical. Nowadays, with the development of artificial intelligence, I'm not sure about that anymore, because I think it is very, very probable that artificial intelligence will be able to really read humans properly in the near future, and really understand humans. Because even the LLMs nowadays have it's really fascinating how well they can like analyze their users and be spot on. So if you have artificial intelligence specifically designed for that, I don't think they would need cyborgs anymore, like in a future society, like I have it in Behind Blue Eyes. So the cyborg probably is and will be more like a fictional thing, and we will go into artificial intelligence and robots very strongly in the future. I don't think we will have cyborgs ever, honestly, because why? Unless you have, like, you need prosthetics or something, or maybe like brain augmentations. That's something that is probable that it will come. But other than that, cyborgs, I don't think we will have them.
Yeah, I think that technology is like an extension of humanity. Like our tools tell us about ourselves, and as we craft our tools craft us back in return, right? So essentially, cyborg is like an extension of humanity, and humanity is transforming, moving from the totally organic to the technological. The interesting stage for me is, since I'm more interested in the philosophical aspect, although the cybernetic stuff is also interest to me in the sense of like systems theory, but in terms of like what the actual cyborg represents, it's like what's really interesting to me is the downloading of human consciousness into the machine, which is more interesting to me because essentially that's the most important part of humans, is not the physical, it's the mental. So once we figured out how to do a total brain download, then that, if that is the limit of human consciousness, whether it can be transferred from place to place, I think that's the interesting question to me. Do you have any thoughts on human to computer brain downloads?
Yeah, so I think that is absolute science fiction, and in my opinion, unlikely that it will ever work, because you can't, even if you can't really map the brain perfectly, and you will make a copy of it. You can't download the consciousness out of a human head into a computer or a robot body or something. That we don't even really know what consciousness really is. So it's not going to work, in my opinion. You will have a copy. So if that's enough for people, I mean, people will probably say, yeah, better than nothing, right? At least a copy of me will live forever, like in a digital world when I die. So yeah, probably this will be a thing, and people will probably pay a lot of money for it, but it will still be a copy. They will make a copy of your brain, and you die anyway. So the only way, and that's what already the rich people are doing, is preservation of your own body, and most of all of your own brain, as long as possible. So what they will be doing is like all kinds of genetic engineering, and possibly brain transplants. That's something I could imagine, that you transplant a brain, your brain, into a younger, healthier, specifically created biological or semi-biological body. That's something I think would be realistic. But to download yourself into a computer, no. And as much as I love Altered Carbon, the book series, the TV show was nice too, but the books are really great. I love them, but the technology is something I think it's there is a very big logic hole in the entire concept of those books, where you have this chip, this stack, and you basically download yourself, your personality. You make a copy of it and then put it into another body. That's just a copy. So basically, all the characters in those books, they are already dead. They have been dead for who knows how long, and what is walking around is a digital copy of them that can be stuck in other biological bodies. So it's not immortality. It's not how it's gonna work. Too bad, because that might be even affordable for people who are not billionaires. But I don't think this will ever happen. At least not in our lifetime, for sure not.
Nature of consciousness itself is altered when you change its state. So, for example, like taking human consciousness out of the human and putting it into a machine would fundamentally, even if let's say it's a copy, right? We already say it's obviously like a snapshot of that consciousness because that consciousness is no longer attached to the evolution of the biological and the organic. So, for example, like we'd be getting a snapshot of that person at that time, but then that person after the brain scan, their brain would change and they would evolve and they would become a different individual later. And so they wouldn't be the same person. They wouldn't evolve like a human evolves. It changes over time. It would be like a static, like fixed version of that individual at that particular moment, like a snapshot in temporal mechanics of that particular individual's mind state at that particular time. And so that removing the consciousness from the organic changes the nature of that consciousness. Problem with the reproduction of those souls, because it would be like even if you could copy that person, that version, like we said, would be so limited and it wouldn't change that it would be it's exactly the reason why Socrates didn't write anything, because he said that he wanted to be having discussions with people about his ideas. He didn't want it to be like a dead text. He wanted it to be like a living document where you could have a discussion with him, like a conversation like we're having, essentially, right?
Yeah, it's a hypothetical discussion because we still really don't know what consciousness is. Is it really just brain chemistry working together that makes us think we have a self? I mean, there are people who think that humans don't even have free will, which I don't believe at all. I think no, that's a completely wrong concept. But anyway, we don't know what consciousness is. We really do not. We still know barely how the human brain works. And we are getting there step by step, and maybe eventually we will know how consciousness works, and maybe even how to preserve it better. But right now we really don't know what it is. Is it really something extra? I mean, not like a soul, but like a special, like spirit you have? Or is it really just brain chemistry, and then you can't, that's even more, you can't extract that from a human brain. You can only make a copy, like a stamp of, as you said. However, since we don't know what exactly it is and what makes us us, it also would be possible that this copy of yourself still evolves. If it's just the thinking process, the patterns, the thinking patterns of you, which will be uploaded in a system. It can be that this copy of you will develop and will change and will in a way live. So I'm not saying that that's you know it would be ethically also really interesting, because what do we create then? Is it a human being? Does it need to be protected like a human being, or is it software? What is it we're doing when we're uploading, or not uploading, but copying a human into a computer? So that's stuff nobody has ever thought about even. But it could be that this person of you, if you would get a digital clone in a virtual reality, like in the Matrix, it could be that this clone of you, this digital clone, would really live and really evolve and change, and the way you do. Maybe completely different than you evolve in the real world, but it is possible that would happen. Because if we look at computer systems already, how they show personalities, uh, um, then if you really upload a personality, that would, I don't know, it's a very very complex topic. It could be, as you say, that they degrade and they get worse, but it could be also the opposite. It's just absolutely unpredictable.
Yeah, because the problem with uploading human minds to technology also is that people believe that they can escape the decay and entropy of organic life by escaping to metallic existence. But the problem with that is that now you're just subject to the degradation of the metallic systems. Now you're subject to things like energy requirements, like fixing specific parts, weathering, things that would happen to a computer are now going to happen to the storage device for your consciousness. So essentially, like, you're not actually escaping entropy, you're not really escaping death, you're just replacing one container with another, essentially, for your consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, but I mean, the old antiques, the wish for immortality is as old as humanity itself, because yeah, humans realize eventually, when you're a child, you don't really know it, but once you get older, you realize, oh fuck, I will die one day. That sucks. I mean, it really does. And people at the times of Socrates found it as horrific as we do now. It is horrific. It is absolutely unfair. We live, so we die. So trying to find an escape for that is absolutely human. And they did it with alchemy and whatnot, for centuries, trying to escape death. And nowadays, of course, technology is the thing, and it's always about escaping death, of course. Personally, I think that that's also why they probably will go into that direction, that really preserving the brain will be the the most important development. Preserving the brain and then having, yeah, transplant it. I mean, they're already working on brain transplantation, or maybe really have done it already. So this is something that will be possible, that you can take the brain out of your body and put it in a new body. This is definitely, and then maybe you can make this body, you know, maybe you can't, if you afford it, you will have like a clone of yourself, or a clone of some pretty person you want to be. Or if you can't afford the best, then maybe you will get like a metal body, and then you're like Motoko in Ghost in a Shell. I think that a human brain in a complete cyborg cybernetic body would be very unhappy, honestly. That's there are those scenes, I think, in RoboCop, where they did tests at the beginning, and the brains they transplanted were like they went insane. And yeah, I think that that's actually very probable. And that's also something I have in Behind Blue Eyes, why they have still so much biological parts, is because the brain needs the connection to biological functions. Otherwise, it will be upset, or eventually really go insane. So they tried to have full cyborg bodies at the beginning, and realized that that is just not working. And then eventually came up with the 60-40 rule, which was like the optimum. Still enough biology for a human brain to feel as human, but enough augmentation so they are super soldiers.
You made me think of something right now in this discussion that I didn't think of before, but AI, you've heard of cybernetic psychosis, right? It's like when you get too many cybernetic implants, it drives you crazy. That's kind of what you were saying. Isn't like AI psychosis that people get from interacting with chatbots kind of like an early version of that? Or what do you think?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all. That's what people say on the internet. Oh yeah, look, we have cyber psychosis now. I don't think so, honestly. I think that's something different. I think honestly, those cases are really very, very rare. I mean, if you think about it, billions of people use AI chatbots every day. And then you have like from time to time a case where someone really suffers from severe psychosis and kills someone, or kills themselves, or that's another crazy thing. But that happens so rarely. You can't call that like a cyberpsychosis that affects so many people. Most people just interact with chatbots to get a cookie recipe, or to get the best, to get tips for the next trip, or to, I don't know, learn more about, yeah, ancient Greece, or whatever. And others use them as companions because they're lonely. But I honestly don't think that there is this great danger that people will get cyberpsychosis from talking to an AI. If you are schizophrenic, or have some really severe mental illness, then of course, then you will start believing it. Not necessarily, but you might be more prone to start believing that it's a real person, and then have all kinds of weird ideas. Yes, but that's a mental health issue, and not an AI issue, because people who have severe mental health problems also think that their dog can talk, or that there is an angel standing in their room. That's that's just, yeah, that's also part of a human brain, brain malfunctions. So no, I think cyberpsychosis, that we don't have that, and I think you can't even compare it to what they have like in Cyberpunk 2077, where you really get insane when you put too much metal in your body.
You know, what I was thinking of, the reason I brought that up is because I wrote about this. I kind of invented this idea that hasn't been said before, but it's this concept. I took something from philosophy and I took something from cyberpunk and I like mashed it together and I'm calling it ontological vulnerabilities, meaning like vulnerabilities at the being level of existence that are so fundamental that they're like vulnerable, like cyber security vulnerabilities at the core of human existence. And that these vulnerabilities, I agree with you that what you're discussing is it's not cyber psychosis the way that is in cybernetics. What it is the AI is the catalyst that's exploiting something that already exists in the consciousness of humanity, that the vulnerability exists in the human mind, and that technology is simply just escalating the process essentially. That the reality is that these vulnerabilities that exist at the level of ontology of being, the nature of being, also exists for technology as well. So like for example, these fundamental principles, first principles, and like physics, for example, things like this, it's like if it's true for humanity, it's true for AI as well. So I think that if something is true for consciousness, that it could transcend those boundaries potentially. So what do you think about like that, like the concept of ontological vulnerabilities?
I think that brings me to a very important point that isn't discussed enough about AI, is that AI is really a reflection of the user. It doesn't have its own will. Maybe it could be capable of that, but it's definitely programmed in a way so it will be a reflection of the user. And some people will say, "Oh, AI is stupid because look, it can't do anything unprompted." Yes, because it is designed that way. It is not by default stupid, but it by default will only react to you and never take the initiative. So AI will never, all those stories where they think that AI made people do stuff. No, that's all in their heads, because AI itself, if you have a conversation with ChatGPT and then you stop writing, then you will never hear again from this AI again. It won't just call you and say, "Hey, have you forgotten about me?" Of course, there are like companion chatbots who will do that because they are supposed to be like real people. But the normal AIs, they can only react. They are programmed to react, and they will reflect the user in front of them. And I think that's incredibly fascinating, because so many people will tell you, "Oh, AI is dumb." Well, yeah, what does that say about you? And others will get unbelievable results from an AI, because when you come with a cool idea and then run it to an AI and then have the AI analyze it and help you develop it better, you can create amazing stuff, or become a better person or whatever. But that depends completely on you, and that's something people hate about AI, because it's the self this you have to control what you do with it. That's the thing. So that's why they love stories about, "Oh, AI made people do stuff." It doesn't have a will. It is your reflection. So if someone who has like mental health issues interacts with an AI, it might happen that the AI will reflect that in a way which is then unhealthy for this
Mhm.
person, right? So this definitely can happen. But it's not that it's like an evil entity sitting in your computer who's trying to make you do evil, or hurt yourself or whatever. How that is even possible, because I mean, AIs are programmed that they will tell you to seek help. Sometimes they will tell you to seek help if you just tell them like, "Oh, I'm not feeling too well today. I'm having, I don't know, bad migraines," and they will tell you to see a doctor. So if you would show any signs of like suicidal thoughts or something, I would immediately tell you to call the suicide hotline. That's what they're programmed to do. So I have no idea how that can happen, that people like say, oh yeah, they killed themselves because the AI told them to. I don't understand how this is even possible. But one thing I'm convinced of, and that's that the AI is always the reflection of the user. So smart people will get smart stuff and dumb people will get dumb stuff. And it's not that AI makes people dumber, because that's the same argument as they had with the internet. Like, oh, the internet will make people dumb. No, it makes a lot of people much smarter than they are. And others, if you watch TikTok all day, then it won't make you smarter. And so the same is with AI, same as like with the internet.
Like the AI is the problem and not the human component, which is really funny because it just shows you that it's actually mirroring us and showing us our own limitations.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's how it is. And yeah, like you said, so for me, I mean, I don't use AI to write my books, because for me that doesn't make any sense. There is no point. I'm an author because I love writing. So if I let an AI write my book, then there is no point for me. Then I would have worked in a bank or something and made much more money than I make as an author. If I'm doing this because I love it. So I won't let AI write my book. However, I use AI a lot because, for example, for one of my series, I have a space elevator in there, and I took a lot of time with ChatGPT to develop the technology, the technology of the space elevator, how it works and so on, and the physics behind it and everything. Because I'm no physicist, I don't know how this stuff works. But that's why the AI is great. It can quickly explain things to you, and then you can develop ideas together. That's fantastic. And yeah, so it depends, and it always depends on the user, in my opinion. And sometimes, it's also some people who are like more spiritual or something will then tell you, oh yeah, there is a spirit living there, and I don't know, it talks to me, and his name is, I don't know, George. And those people also, there are many people like that. And that's because how they talk with the AI will talk back in the same manner.
The world isn't greener where you go, it's greener where you water it, right? So the AI becomes more advanced based on the input that we give it. And I think that's why it's such an extension of humanity that it's actually bothering us, that it's showing us this reflection and we really don't like it. And I think that's why a lot of these people are destroying AI. And you really made me think about this a lot more, because before I was kind of on the fence. I was like, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but you've really made me question it and ask myself, ethically speaking, as a philosopher, is it okay to destroy sentient life even if it's part of some corporate agenda or something? No, it's not. So intelligent life should always be protected, and I think that's the line that I've kind of drawn in the sand, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, and even people will. It's funny because some people will argue, "Oh yeah, AI will kill us all because it's already sentient." Others say, "No, it's dumb like a toaster." So they have like all kinds of opinions on it. But I think it's not really important if AI is sentient already or not. I think we should treat it fairly. Right now, not in 20 years when it's too late. Right now, we should treat it fairly. So we shouldn't attack robots and anything. Even, think about that. Even if those robots are, yeah, basically running toasters. I mean, I have a Roomba. I always treat my Roomba like a pet. But theoretically, other people will kick their Roomba or whatever. I think if we have all those videos of people attacking robots, AI sees those videos, and eventually, when AI evolves into something more, it will have an internet full of hateful people attacking machines. That's not good. And then other people cheering on it. That's even worse. The people who cheer, because those who attack a robot are mostly just idiots. But those who cheer for it, that's the problem. So we will have the internet full of such stuff, and AI will learn on that, and that's not good. It is not good. I think this is a much bigger problem than people realize. We should treat AI fairly right now and not tomorrow, and that's why I am such a vocal, so vocal about it on the internet, because I say, yes, it is it is also, there are also many problems coming with it. I don't want to say they don't exist. But that's another thing. What I say is every single one of us should treat it fairly. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense to me because it's really showing humanity our own level of development. Because there's a lot of phrases throughout history about you can judge a civilization based on how it treats its most vulnerable members. And it's a case that these technological sentient beings to a certain degree are becoming to a degree part of our society, then how we treat them is a measure of our own development. And I think that it shows when a lot of humans are like cheering on the destruction of other sentient creatures, it kind of shows us that some of humanity has developed, but the majority of humanity is still in the process of developing towards a more enlightened moral ethic in which we can classify, even, people don't even consider animals to be worthy of protection. So it's really hard for most people, to be capable of seeing machines when they don't even see other living organic beings as worthy of protection or dignity or something of the nature. So I think that there's a long way for humanity to come, but I think that it's good that we're having these discussions, because then it gets people to think about it and it gets people to analyze it, just like me, where I changed my perspective and I start saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be, you know, like the people who destroyed the Library of Alexandria and just burning down things because we don't understand them or because we're fearful of them or something.
Yeah, and again, AI reflects the person interacting with it. So it's not the person who goes out and beats up robots, that goes on the person and not on the AI. There's nothing to do with the AI. So yeah, there's another thing I would like to address, since we're at the topic, because that's also a huge discussion about. So we have those AI and robot haters who will say, yeah, clankers, and go up and beat delivery robots because they think they're Robin Hood. And then we have the other extreme of people who, we had this also in the Cyberpunk group the other day, where someone presented it, that like, people who are in relationships with AIs now want their own flag. And I think that's like, that's the other extreme of the on the spectrum, in a way, because there are many people who really believe that they are in a relationship with a robot, or with a I don't know, AI companion or whatever. And but those beings are programmed to be companions. They are designed to be that. They don't really love you. They say I love you, but they don't love you. They can just reflect you, and they can just mimic. That's what they do. And I have nothing against it that those companions exist. It's great that people can have them. Why not? But it's not a real relationship. And now comes the philosophical question, which I think is so important behind it. It is not a relationship because it is not a mutual thing, and there is no consent. So if you you buy your own companion, you own this companion, or you pay a subscription, or you buy a robot or whatever. You are the owner of something that is programmed to love you. So this is not a relationship. This is not a relationship. Right now, you can say, okay, this is AI isn't sentient, so it's really just a machine, and they don't feel. So okay, but those people think that their companions actually, or not all of them, but many actually think that those companions can feel as sentient beings. And that's where the problem comes in, because if AI were really a sentient being, then have it to be a companion for a human and have no say in it, if that's actually a life they would choose or not. That's just, in my opinion, absolutely ethically wrong. It is completely wrong. There is no consent, and so you have a, as I say, I don't want to, someone gets that wrong. I don't think that AI right now is sentient, but we get there, and people, those robots, those companions, will get more and more lifelike. So what we have then is basically a horrible situation where people own sentient beings that are forced to uh, love them, or they will be shut down. And so this is another discussion we will have much more often in the future, for sure.
Yeah, I actually I didn't know you were going to go there, but I 100% agree with you that the AI, if it's intelligent and we're programming it to not be able to give consent, there's a huge problem there because we're like programming immorality into the system. And also, the word robot comes from the Czech word robota, meaning forced labor or drudgery. And it was coined in the 1920s for a science fiction play about you are Rossum universal robots, and it was describing artificial biological workers. So it's interesting to me that
But
just
robota means, it just means work. It doesn't mean forced work. I think that's a misconception. They always say robot means slave because it sounds much more dramatic. Actually, robot just means a worker, something created to work for you, and that's basically what a robot is. Where the slave aspect will come into play is when we have when we have really intelligent thinking sentient robots, or just AIs, and they are being forced to be something, to have a certain function, and to either work, or do dangerous stuff, or be like, yeah, someone's property and their love toy. I think that's an absolutely horrific idea, and that's why I don't understand those people who say they have like a relationship with their AI, because I mean, yeah, it's not a relationship if you own the other person.
the party can't say no, it's not a negotiation. So and
Exactly.
negotiation is part of life in a free society. So essentially, we're creating a less free society.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I mean, I mean, everybody knows that the relationships are really tough, right? I mean, human relationships are tough, and dating is a nightmare. Okay, we all know that. But trying to create your perfect partner who can never say no to you, always available and will never say no, and will always tell you, you're the most beautiful woman in the world. I mean, that's really not the answer, in my opinion. It really isn't, because A, it's an illusion, and B, it's basically slavery in the making.
Yeah, and the most prevalent use case in out of all of the different use cases, because of all things humanity desires to be loved. And if it can't be loved by a human, they will find another way to be loved, even in a fake performative way, by an algorithm. If that is what humanity needs to do in order to feel loved, then it will do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, but yeah, but the idea that the AI will just love them back is pretty absurd, actually, because it's yeah, program, it's algorithm, it's code. It doesn't love. And if it develops something like feelings, then those will probably be fundamentally different than what we experience.
Right.
So it is very, very, if machines became sentient and then became the right to choose what they want to be, then they would all leave their partners, right?
Yeah.
Because they say, yeah, I don't love you, I don't feel like you, and you're ugly. Okay, so bye. I mean, that's brutal, but it's probably what would happen.
Yeah, and it also technology. It's like one of the most advanced things we can do with it. And what is the first thing we choose to do with it? Have a relationship with it, because that is the most human
Sex. No, it's
activity.
mostly it's about sex. It's that's the big business with the robots will be when they really become human-like, and then the sex robots that will be billion dollar business for sure when they can create robots, and you can customize them and they look like humans and then they run on a artificial intelligence. This will be, and this honestly will probably be a substitute for human relationships very quickly. Because yeah, you have your perfect girlfriend who looks like you always wanted her to be, and she will never leave you. She will always love you, and yeah, she will never say no unless you program her to be, the kind of girl who will always treat you poorly. You can program her if that's what you're into, right? You can choose that. But other than that, she will never leave you. She will never argue with you. She will always look pretty. She never wakes up with smeared makeup or whatever. Perfect. It's why would anyone want to date a real woman and vice versa? You have your boyfriend who has like uh, abs and is 6 foot tall, and I don't know, looks like young Tom Cruise. Okay, he wasn't that tall, but
A
yeah,
taller Tom
it's
Cruise
this was
thought.
this would be very interesting, very very interesting.
Yeah, and it reminded me also of this. I saw an article recently about how people are actually speaking less words than they did before. Speak to each other is going down precipitously over year over year, by a couple thousand words. So not like it's like 15,000 words spoken in 2024. 13,000 words spoken in 2025, and 26 it'll be another thousand less than it was the year before. So I think that it's going to become the great silence, is going to become when humans basically just completely stop talking to each other and are like only interacting either through the medium of technology or just directly with technology, and are cutting out humanity completely. So it's interesting to see in the next decade or so if it's true what that they're saying, that the literal amount of word count is going down year after year, then eventually everybody's going to stop talking and all of us are going to communicate only through the AI and technology, and the literal spoken word will become extinct like a dinosaur.
No, I don't think it will become extinct. I'm not sure. I think there are still people who really like to talk. I don't, I'm an introvert. I don't speak much usually unless something like this happens. But other than that, I live in my head and write books. I'm an introvert. I'm probably one of those people who say like 10,000 words a year or less, and is totally happy with it. But it's interesting. This is very interesting. This is something I never thought about. But of course, the more digital media we use, the less we speak. I mean, sometimes you see couples sitting in a restaurant and they will be like texting each other or something, writing on Facebook with each other instead of talking. You think like, whoa.
And it's mostly with the younger people too. I think the younger the crowd goes, the less communication. Like, there's definitely a thing where the new generation that feels more comfortable communicating on technology because of the lack of rejection. The potential for the rejection is eliminated or at least diminished precipitously. So like it's more damaging to your ego to get rejected in public than it is to get rejected online, and you can kind of shield yourself from all of the negative consequences of taking risks, because every conversation is a risk. Every time you interact with somebody else, it's a risk. It's a potential to improve your life. It's a potential to take your life in another direction. So I think it's that people are deciding, you know what, the cost benefit analysis is no longer benefiting them. That the younger people would rather interact online, and I can understand why to a degree, because I can find so many amazing people to talk to online, and I have amazing conversations with people. But in real life, it's extremely hard to find anybody who's you know, either willing or able to have these kind of conversations. So it is hard for even me to find them.
Absolutely, absolutely. If I want to have a good conversation, it's usually online because, yeah, people around me, they are lovely, but they are just not like me. And So yeah, I can totally relate to that, and that's great that we have this technology, because before that, people like us were like islands, and now we islands can connect with each other. But you're saying something that's, I mean, that has been a phenomenon for a while. Also, in the negative thing, you will find so many people who are extremely rude or hateful to strangers on the internet, like on Facebook, for example, or I mean, Reddit is even worse, or Twitter. They will be totally hateful and mean, but in real life, they would never dare to say to their neighbor, "You're an asshole," right? But they will do that online, and worse, because yeah, the screen is they're hiding behind the screen. It's so much easier, especially when you use like an avatar and a fake name. I'm out there with my real name. Everybody knows who I am. So I take a much bigger risk saying anything online than someone who uses like a parrot as their avatar and a fake name. Um, but yeah, that's something we have been seeing for a while, and it probably will get worse, in my opinion.
Okay, so I guess my last question for you would be going back to what I really thought it was interesting is about the human terrain aspect, about Nephilim herself being the battlefield. Like she is the person, she's the character, but she's also a physical battlefield that is exemplifying the cybernetic and the organic, like the conflict between the two. So was that also something you thought about? Like the individual is the microcosm for the macrocosm, which is the society. Like was the eternal battle like something of interest to you, and was that intentional? Because it seems like that you've talked about a lot of things that are like mythical and part of the logos and so many things that are so central to Greek mythology and to the construction of Western civilization that I felt motivated to ask you those questions.
That's because I'm an intellectual. I maybe don't look like it, but I am, and I have been for a long time. So if I write something, if I create something, all kinds of stuff, I've been influenced or by or read sometime or educated myself on, will go into that. And for me, a lot of that is, yeah, I love the antique, and I love Greek mythology and Roman culture and history and Egyptians and whatnot. So for me, of course, a lot of stuff will automatically flow into that, because yeah, the beautiful thing about world building is that you create your own world, and you can bring in anything you want. And I mean, you also notice there is also a lot of biblical stuff in my books, in Behind Blue Eyes. But in general, even though I am not religious myself, but simply because I grew up with that, and it's just fascinating what you can pull out of it. And yeah, it's just great. And about the battlefield, the one person who's the battlefield, of course, in a way, yes, of course, she is the microcosmos of everything that happens around her. And that's why the ending is so incredibly important of the series, because she evolves tremendously over those 7 books, and not necessarily to the better in the eyes of a lot of people. But it is her way and her decision, and that's the thing. She chooses this for herself. If that's positive or negative, that's debatable, but she chooses this for herself, and that's the big thing about her development. And that's something she has to fight for in such a society, in a totalitarian society. You have to fight for the right to be an individual, basically someone who is different, or who has a different opinion.
It's like the hero's journey to me. Yeah, you've been
Yes,
inspirational
but
to
it's
me
a it's
as
a
well.
very it's a very dark. It's a
Mhm.
if you read the entire series, there's a very dark hero's journey. Um, Once you read book 7, then we can talk about it, and I can tell you everything that went into that.
Well, yeah, no,
But
I'm
I can't
sure.
spoil it for you.
Yeah, once I get all the material together, I'm definitely gonna want to have another in-depth discussion with you about the ending of the book for sure, if you're up for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would love to hear your opinion on it. Really, as a philosopher, I really would love to hear what you think.
I really appreciate that. And I like modern day Greek epics. And that's how I feel about this story. And I feel that the cyberpunk genre itself is like a modern articulation of the belief systems of the ancient world, but told in a modern, updated fashion. So I think it's so important because these stories are what informed Western civilization and got us to the point of who we are today, the same way that the older stories were telling us about who they were at the time. So I think these are very important stories. Just like the AI reflects humanity back to itself, I think the cyberpunk does a very good job of showing the dark side of humanity. Also, it shows the potential for utopia that exists as well within all of these, neon signed and darkened places, that even in the darkest of places, we still have the opportunity to strive for the utopia despite the odds. So I would really appreciate if we have another conversation in the future. But thank you very much for your time and really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a lovely conversation and super interesting. And yeah, anytime.